Now, I thought today I might introduce to you what I call record decks on the cheap, and I mean cheap, or should I say shit record players. And I got this one just because I had a few old records that were a bit scratched, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money on a machine to play a few old records from the 70s on it. Now, there's been a lot of talk about cheap record players and damaging of records, but if you're like me and you just got a few old records that you had for a few years and they weren't new when you got them, then to me it's just not worth spending a lot of money, because you're going to use it once or twice, and another 6 months later you might decide to play another LP on it. And what I'm going to do with this one, yes, I'm going to change the cartridge and get one of those sound bars, so I got a bit of a better sound than those internal speakers. This is the Bush one, and it's got a design fault, and I want to show you. These are the speakers, right, and I'll show you the design fault. The lid covers the speakers when you put the lid down. Now, that is not very clever, because the sound is just going to disappear as soon as you put the lid down. And whoever designed this wasn't very intelligent. And I said to a number of people that I actually know, is they need more people like me with Asperger's syndrome on the flipping design teams, because I wouldn't have made that mistake. I would say, hang on, you put the lid down, you're covering the speakers. Can't you make it a bit longer and make the lid with a curve in it so that the speakers aren't covered? The other thing that I would have done is add some kind of counterweight on it, and a slightly better tone arm, and a reasonable cartridge in it. And considering you can buy a flip over stylus cartridge brand new for £8, it's not worth putting one of those crappy cartridges with the red needles on. I bought a needle that will go into that and a new cartridge for £8. It's just not worth using those shitty red needles. And I want to come over here, and you probably won't see much. I don't know if I can bloody find it now. Yeah, in that bag there's one of those styluses, those red styluses. It's just a bit of plastic with a bit of sapphire in, and part of the reason you don't get very good sound on these is the cartridges are very heavy on the records, and it's because the stylus has got no give in it. It's just a plastic bar attached to a square bit of plastic. There's no damping, it's just, you know, the record has to really get a punishment to get the needle to what I call oscillate or wave, because there's no rubber boot on it. And I thought most of the problems with these record players, people say it's the weight of the cartridge. It's not. It's the flipping crappy stylus that's is as rigid as a lump of concrete. So what I've done is I've bought a new stylus and a new cartridge, and this arm has got like a square piece sticking out here. What I'm going to do is put a piece of threaded rod in there, and it won't look off because it's square on the back. And I'm going to put make a lead weight, because I'm a bit of an engineer, that comes out to there, and I will be able to make the arm a bit lighter. And the reason I went for this cheap Bush rather than those Crosley things is one reason, and I want to show you. One thing, it returns and it auto shuts off. And I want to show you something else as well. If I take this record off and I place it gently against my sofa, which is probably not a good idea, it's got a full-size wheel. That wheel I believe it's 11.5 inches. I think it was about 11 inches. So it's actually quite a big wheel. The other thing is it's got a bronze bush in it. a lot of these, when you press the turntable, it rocks on that spindle, and the reason why is because there's no bush in it. A number of people have complained that they're a little bit floppy, but what people don't realise, they're supposed to be that way. It's a shock spring underneath, so when you knock the table, the record doesn't jump. So now my suggestion, if you buy one of these cheap record players, don't play modern LPs on it, because if you do, you wreck them. What a lot of people don't realise is the modern LPs of today are different to the old ones. These are basically an old design from the 70s, 80s, and they'd be adequate for playing 70s records on, because the grooves were further apart. But if you play these punk bass things, you're going to wreck the record, because the stylus is too rigid and the arm is too heavy. But if you're using records like I've got from the 70s, you can play them on one of these and it'll be fine, because they're an old record. It's been played I don't know how many times. But if you want to go into serious vinyl collecting, don't buy one of these. Go and get something like a Project. There's a deck called a Project. They're a reasonable price. And go and get yourself a small amplifier. Even when with built-in speakers, you can buy those and use that. But that's a little introduction. I mean, there's no expense spared. It's cheap. It's got a 45 adapter, and the lid, it had a slight scratch on it on the corner. It was like that when I had it. Probably the way I opened it. This was packed in a cardboard box. It was as thin as a cornflake packet with 2 foam end pieces. There just wasn't any packaging, and then it was sent through the post. And I opened it with a knife, and I reckon I must have nicked the corner of the lid. And there was no rubber dampers in those holes. They were missing. So I've made some using an old mat out of a mouse mat. And they've worked. They're a little bit... How do I put it? Oh, well, that's no bloody good. It's just bloody come apart, isn't it? No, perhaps not. No, I made these. I don't know whether they're any good. Yeah, perhaps they are. I made these little bits of felt that go in there. I'm just hoping they're going to be okay and not break off. Yeah, they'll be okay. I've actually made those little felt pieces and hardened them up with a bit of nail lacquer. And it means the lid doesn't slam down onto here. It doesn't matter, but I just wanted to give it a little bit of cushioning by that. And the lid clipped on when I had it. The speakers are pretty shit. They're very trebly. There's no bass. Of course, it's only a small amplifier. But what I'm thinking of doing is getting one of those sound bars and sticking it up here. Because I'm very deaf, so I need a lot of sound. And those speakers sound tinny, which I like. And the reason why is because I'm so deaf on the top end, I need a lot of top end to hear anything. And I like 1930s music, so I bought a load of 1930s dance bands. And I've got a load of 78s to play on my wind-up one under there. And I got some 33 RPM dance band. This is just going to be used for 33s. Won't be used for anything else. And that deck, they're not accurate. They say they're 33, they're not. It's actually 34 because I've counted it. It should be 33 and a third. Yeah, about third, in other words, 33 and a half. Near enough. It's 34, half a revolution out. I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference, not to my hearing. I didn't check the 45s or count the 78 up, but I'll probably do that with my trusty stopwatch. So that's an introduction to the Bush record player, and I might start playing some dance band on there and play up some of them to YouTube. But my advice is this: if you've got a load of old records and you just want to play them again, go and buy something like this, something that's not too expensive. But if you want to get into serious vinyl collecting, then you need to spend a reasonable amount of money and get something with a counterweight, an anti-skate mechanism, and a magnetic cartridge. So if people are watching this video and say this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, yes, I do know what I'm talking about. Yes, I bought a cheap record player, but it's because I just want to play a few old 33s, and I'm not going to spend a couple of £100 just to play a few records every other month. If I was a real collector of 33s, new ones, I wouldn't give that bloody house room. I go and get a project deck with an amplifier, or go out and get something a bit better. Anyway, that's an introduction to the cheap option to start playing some of your 33s again. Bush, I don't know who Bush is now, probably nothing. If you want to see a real Bush, I'll show you one. This one here is a 1954 Bush DAC-90A valve radio. Now that's a real Bush radio with the valves in it, and you take 30 seconds for you to get any sound out of it. I've got two of those, a white one and a brown one. And I tried buying some an old record player. It was made in the 50s. One of the very first with the stylus. I think it's made 51. But the motor was weak, the cartridge wasn't any good, and the amplifier was weak. There wasn't anything on it that was any good. And I thought, it's not worth me spending any money on it. Where am I going to start? The only thing that was any good was the case. And that was a horrible, bloody, shitty brown colour. It was basically shit colour. And so I had to spray that and make that a nicer colour. And I didn't want to spend anything on it. And when I took the speaker out, even the bloody speaker had an hole in it. So I thought, no, well, I couldn't even use that for anything. And I thought, oh, it was AC/DC with the mains drop, but there wasn't even a bloody mains transformer that was any good. The only thing I got out of it that was good was the UL41 output valve. They're getting rare. And this one was an original one with a metal skirt. And it wasn't burnt out either. So I paid £30 for that old machine. I got a valve worth 15 quid out of it. So that was a waste. But you can't win them all. Just a word of advice. If you've got a couple of old records you just want to play like I have, buy something cheap and cheerful. But if you are a collector and you really want to get into collecting vinyl, you know, give this a miss. Go and get something a bit better. It's up to you what you want. But the more money you spend, the better deck you will get. But if you've like me and you've only got a few records, then you don't really want to spend a lot. Anyway, bye-bye. So tata trousers.